its owners and/or associates.
Welcome to Inspiring Hope with Lois Herman, a leading expert in professional coaching, clinical hypnosis, and energy clearing. Lois is an award-winning author of Chronicles of Hope. She has decades of experience in advanced hypnosis techniques, has conducted highly effective success coaching programs that have helped clients discover ways to achieve success, empower themselves, their families, as well as holistic practitioners to expand their practices. Get ready to be empowered with your host, Lois Herman.
Good morning and welcome to Inspiring Hope. I am your host, Lois Herman, and I'm here to inspire you with positive messages and celebrate people who are making a difference in our world. When we focus our thoughts and energies on truth, honesty, and integrity, we create powerful shifts that cause us to be more positive and peaceful. As we lift our energy, we empower everyone around us. If we each do what we can to make small shifts in awareness, we create ripples of hope. Join us as catalysts for positive change for our families, our communities, and our world at large. I hope you're inspired by today's show. And today I'd like to wish all of the mothers and those mothering spirits a happy Mother's Day 2022. This poem kind of caught my thoughts this week. Yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. That's by Khalil Gibran. So what is your vision of hope for mothers today? In times past, mothers stayed home with their children, nurtured and cared for them, tended the house, baked goodies, and created projects to help them learn. Then came the days of working mothers who earned a living for the family while attempting to be superwoman and continuing the legacy of motherhood. What is the role mothers play on our earth today? Join our show as we discuss the changing and challenging roles of motherhood in today's confusing world. I can only imagine the challenges of being a young mother today, raising children in such a toxic world where parental rights and choices are challenged by factions of society, where things we used to trust and take for granted are brought into question, where teachers are encouraged to inject personal biases and imprint confusing sexual, social, political, medical messages upon our children's minds without parental awareness or consent. Do you question the judgment of some women who are fighting for the right to kill viable children up to and after the point of birth? This is insanity. Many mothers are forced to relinquish their role in actively raising children to caregivers, schools, TV, and media, and more. What has happened to our family unit? One with a compassionate mother's love, a strong supporting father, and the safety of a trusted home. It was fantasy even for me as a child, hardly attainable as a young working mother. And in this day of confusing and conflicting times, is it even remotely possible? Being a working mother left me with many regrets based on necessary decisions that made lifelong imprints on my own now-grown children. From leaving them in the care of problematic individuals, to bringing them with me in the middle of the night when called in to do diagnostic procedures, to being too exhausted to fully participate in their daily play. In the 90s, my son was bullied in grammar school, which led us to move to a completely different school district. My daughter was also bullied in high school, and that led her to being homeschooled. Now I can only imagine how difficult it must be for students and parents in this particularly difficult era with so much societal conflict, division, and judgmental perceptions. What do we know, and what can we do? The one thing that has stood the test of time is the steadfast love in my heart for my children and the trust in the amazing grace of God to help with decisions that guide us through challenging times. Mothers do the best we can with the information we have at any given moment. We must trust in the power of love, embrace the protection of light, forgive ourselves for errors made, and hold memories of joy in our hearts with a hope for a bright future in our minds. As we celebrate our earthly mothers, let us also remember the greatest mother of all, our Mother Gaia, the Spirit of Earth. In Chronicles of Hope, the collective, the guides and the archangels have told us that not all worlds have their own spirit. We're very lucky. Gaia is the spirit of this planet and cares for all of you, they said. In some sense, you're all her children. You are made of her bones. Gaia is alive, and not all planets are. They encourage us to honor our Earth Mother and return to the ways of native people. Nature-based cultures honor and respect nature. They ask Mother Gaia for sun, rain, bountiful harvest, good hunting, and healing. Their practices are interconnected with nature in all ways, and they show us how to survive and thrive. Let us return to the simple days of connecting with Mother Gaia, who freely gives us all things healthy and natural. Our guides encourage us to learn to think for ourselves, respect our Mother Earth, become grateful for all we are given, and ask for assistance, especially from her. We must raise our vibrational energy and shift civilization to the positive. We must avoid giving into fear and trust the wise ones of the collective and our Mother Gaia to guide us to stay ever vigilant in the light of peace. My own mother passed over 1 year ago, today actually, leaving a legacy of teachings and treasures that she created. She often told stories of her own Native American grandmother who had a long dark braid and a passionate love of nature that I now embrace. My brother has recently located her in our ancestral lineage. She is my 5th great-grandmother, Hannah, a Shawnee princess from 1750. In a few moments, we'll be chatting with a dear friend who is a direct ancestor of the First Nation people, Grandmother Blue Crow. She'd like to share some insight on what it means to be a mother today. Sometimes what we need most is amazing grace. Good morning. You are listening to Inspiring Hope with Lois Herman at WSMN 1590.live or 95.3 FM. And please share our messages with the videos on our YouTube channel, loisherman.com, and join our Hope community for inspiration at chroniclesofhope.net. And today I have the great pleasure of welcoming Grandmother Blue Crow, also known as Auntie Crow, to many. And she's in the studio with me here today. So you have so many fabulous stories and such treasured wisdom. So welcome, welcome.
Thank you. That song unnerves me every single time I hear it because it touches my soul.
Yeah. Yeah.
We talked a little bit about what to talk about today, and then this morning I had a vision. And the vision is, what is a mother today?
Right.
And I don't know. I know what it's like to be a great-grandmother and a grandmother and a mother of adults. But I can't imagine walking the journey of the mother of young children in today's world. I'm very blessed to have always been deeply connected with my ancestors and always felt that I had guidance from them in raising 5 children as a single parent.
Mm-hmm.
But I think society today tries to prevent us staying connected with our ancestors.
Right.
And yet we can if we get into a quiet space and gather our children near or far around us in our hearts and in our minds and in our souls. We can bring forth the ancestral teachings that we've had for many, many, many incarnations. Times were not easier for me 60 years ago raising children, but they were simpler.
Simpler, yes.
And just because it's simple doesn't make it easy.
Mm-hmm.
But I commend the young mothers today and the young fathers serving as mothers
Mm-hmm.
for doing all they're doing to give their children some life of normalcy, whatever that is, and overriding all the fear that's being fed to us through every source that we have available in our daily lives. I think if we can find a way to remember that even when they're not with us, as my children are all over the earth here,
Mm-hmm.
they're still with me.
Absolutely. They're part of you.
They are.
Mhm.
And spiritually, we're bound.
Mm-hmm.
And I know today I will hear from all of them. And it's wonderful.
Yeah.
But I don't expect it.
Mm-hmm.
But when it happens, I get foolish. I just get foolish with joy.
Yes.
And I need to remember that it's okay for me to reach out to them as well,
Oh, yes.
because each of them serves to enhance my motherhood and grandmotherhood and great-grandmotherhood. And so I will.
Mm-hmm.
I will build that bridge, which is what many of our elders have forgotten how to do.
And it's also maintaining the bridge.
Yes.
That sometimes can be challenging because many of us have expectations based on ancestral patterns and expectations that don't fit in today's society.
Exactly.
So we have to, contour
Exactly.
the bridge a little bit differently and be there to reach out to them as
I
we
wouldn't
need
have
to.
dreamt of not contacting my mother or
Yes.
grandmothers during my growing days.
Mhm.
Absolutely would have never even crossed my mind.
Correct.
And had I failed to do so, would have had a very important life lesson delivered before the end of day.
From them, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Or from their interlopers, the
Yes.
ones that were being the messengers.
Yes.
So in the vision this morning, the ancestors came forth for me, not just my own, but there was an army of ancestors came through to remind us to just be still and ask for help. The basic premise for me in the Chronicles of Hope is the embodiment through the words coming through the interpreter and the channel of the ancestors that we may have even lost awareness still exist in our world, to remind us if we are humbly present, they will help.
And we must ask.
We must ask, but many times we ask without knowing we're asking.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't need to be, hey, you, help me. It can be, oh, what am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
And then the help comes.
And then we have to pay attention and be grateful for the answers received.
And put
Because-
aside ego.
Yes.
Put aside ego and let spirit prevail. The body changes while we're here in present body, and then it changes another time for those who believe that. But the spirit remains the same, and it's contiguous. And it acquires all of the knowledge and all of the learning, and that's different. Knowledge and learning are different.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand we are each here for a specific purpose, and that we don't know what it is when we arrive. We may not even know when we leave, but if we've gotten it done, we get to go home. And if we can just remain open to acknowledging the people and the circumstances that get presented to us for us to serve or be served by, life gets much softer.
And embodying the sense of love in the service is also, many people do things because that's what they're supposed to do and not coming from the heart. I do know other mothers who have been very dedicated to challenge the mainstream or the main medical narrative, if you will. And their children would not be alive today had they stuck with something that felt wrong in their heart. But I have one particular mother actually several mothers that I know that were determined, coming from a place of love, to buck the system and to do whatever they could for their children, even though the children may not realize or appreciate it. The actions that those mothers took that came from the heart made all the difference in the world for their children. Again, not necessarily acknowledged or without accolades. It's just, as a mother, you have this intuitive knowing, I must do this for my child.
And sometimes feeling like it's coming from our heart. It's actually coming from ancestral knowing.
Exactly. Yes.
Being filtered through the spirit of the heart.
Mm-hmm. Because
And
we're tapped in, we're open.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
Taking away that fear. We're being taught today in today's world only to trust the manifesting powers that be that we've put into power. When in fact, the powers that be, it's an inside job. It's not an outside job.
Exactly.
And we have it, but we've been conditioned to forget it or to ignore it.
Or to fear it.
And fear.
And another thing that I know in dealing with challenges with my own children, there were times when I could shapeshift into Mama Bear. And I would do whatever I could to rise up and protect my children. That's not the case for others, but for my children, there is this sense of determination. And I'm recognizing that I have a similar type of a determination for this book baby that I've been working on for the past several years. But when we can embrace that power, again, channeling the power of our ancestors, channeling the power of love, truth, integrity, those and honesty, those are key. But that also speaks to the First Nations. There are rules or unwritten rules passed down, stories. Are there not?
Traditions.
Traditions,
yes.
Exactly. And that's basically what it boils down to. Respect Mother Nature. Ask, believe, receive with integrity, with honoring. There's so many what we would call rituals that Native peoples have done that are, in essence, to honor all gifts that come. And we've lost that. We've many times have lost that.
We can get it, and we don't call them rituals. We call them ceremonies.
There we go.
And my husband has a mantra, ceremony, ceremony, ceremony. And he regards everything we do as a ceremony.
Exactly.
I always carry tobacco in my purse. I always carry tobacco in my car. I don't smoke.
Mm-hmm.
It's not what it's for. It's an offering acknowledging that my intention is being manifested through my action.
Mm-hmm.
And it says, I offer this tobacco to carry the strength of the message I'm wanting to deliver.
Beautiful.
And it's so simple. It's just so simple.
So the tobacco is an offering of gratitude.
Correct. Not just gratitude, but sometimes intent.
Okay.
Like if I'm doing prayers for somebody that's sick, I have a very good friend right now who's unbelievably alive through the grace of a miracle with her name on it. And I noticed on our Facebook page there are 300 or 400 people praying for her.
Mm-hmm.
None of the medical staff can believe she's left the hospital alive and is now in rehab walking
And
on
this
her
is
own.
the power of prayer.
8 days later.
Wow.
And she and her husband both recognize that power of communal prayer being exponentially more awakening than just individual prayer,
Exactly.
which doesn't diminish the individual prayer, but it keeps us open to the teachings that in the gatherings, the power of the intent is multiplied.
Absolutely. And it's multiplied by the energy of the people that are coming together
Right.
with pure intention.
Well, and I think of it as a very classic example of the Fibonacci spiral.
Mm-hmm.
The 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13,
Mm-hmm.
21, and so forth, that it doesn't just double and double and double, that it grows in a spiral, and is the spiral as nicely is inclusive of all that's come before, leaving room for all that there is to come in the future.
Wow.
So it's not limiting on either the past or the future.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we're stuck. We're stuck thinking we need it all today. We need it now. I have this. I need this. I want this. I need a bigger car, a newer house, more clothes, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather used to say to my grandmother, "Are you sure you need that?" And she'd say, "I really believe I do." And he'd say, "Will it fit in the casket?" And she would say, "Well, probably not, but it won't fit in yours either." So, but my grandparents were very different. My 4 grandparents were very different people, and they each brought me amazing and unique teachings.
Mm-hmm.
My Irish grandparents were very soft, very gentle, very Irish, and had wonderful accents. And they would make everything just sound like a gift.
Mm.
Even when my grandfather would go into the garden, my grandmother had a rose garden, and he would say, "Lizzie, I'm going to go groom the roses." He didn't say weed them. He went to groom them.
Nice.
And that was very typical of their entire interaction with each other and with us children.
Mm-hmm.
So my other grandparents were more pioneer-like. That was my native grandmother on my father's side. And my grandfather, her husband, was a very creative, capable person. At the age of 75, he completed the building of a 24-foot boat with an inboard motor from stem to stern, including bending the prow. And at the age of 75, he and my grandmother loaded whatever life possessions they were going to keep forever onto that boat in Narragansett Bay in Rhode Island. And they left and went from there to Miami, Florida, all the way by themselves in that boat.
Wow. Determination.
And skill
Mm-hmm.
and belief.
Right.
He had sent a letter to 2 of my uncles who lived near Miami and said when to expect them. They did not know they were coming by boat. They thought they were coming by car or plane. So it was about self-determination and self-empowerment. And he was a very determined person and very capable. Mm-hmm. I've been to the barn recently where he built that boat. It still stands.
Wow. Did he build the barn as well?
Pardon?
Did he build the barn as well?
No, the barn was there before them.
Okay.
They bought the farmhouse and the barn. But he sailed in 1950. He was born in 1875. And the barn is still there in great shape.
That's amazing.
So those kind of things, we can count on our memories. I recently went back to the several homes that I lived in as a child, and my grandparents and my aunts and my uncles and my cousins. And all of the memories that came plowing in as I would see each of these structures that still stands was a bit overwhelming. because it came also with the ancestors from those families. And I remembered experiences shared with each of those families when I was a very young child and up through my teenage years. It's wonderful because it's all still there. I had forgotten.
And you tapped into it. And when you did, by physically being in that
Exactly.
space, then all of the information was flowing through you.
And that reminds me of the many times that the stories were told as a very young child that I had forgotten. And yet a couple of uncles were great storytellers. And when I got to the house that one of them lived at, I could hear my Uncle Joe saying, "Now, love, you must pay attention because I'm only going to say it once." I'd say, "I'm listening." He'd say, "You can't be listening, love, you're talking." One of his great lessons, you know. So very blessed.
Now, the Irish, and I have Irish lineage as well, they had a lot of struggles. It was not an easy life. So coming to America, they left troubles and yet brought that resilience, that tenacity, that determination, and, as you're saying, the softness.
And yet in those days, when my grandparents came, they came in 1926. Actually, my uncle was 17 when he came in 1924 by himself. My grandmother's brother was already here. But to come to America then, you had to have a sponsor, you had to have lodging, and you had to have a job lined up, and you had to have money. Now, he only had $3.60, but he had money, and so it qualified. And the following year, he had sent all the money he earned to my grandfather for him to pay his passage. And then my grandfather also worked and went to a money lender and borrowed the money to bring over my grandmother and the 6 girls. They came together in 1926 on the SS Tuscania. 1-room cabin on the lower level of a freighter for 6 weeks. I can't imagine this. I can't imagine doing that. But they all had to have physicals. When they arrived, there was medical staff at the receptors. And if they were sick, they got sent back.
Wow.
You couldn't come here if you were sick. You had to have a clean bill of health when you left, and you still had to be well when you got here.
And there are many people who died en route as well.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So it was about opening our arms to everyone, but it was opening our arms to all those with intent.
Right.
And they became citizens within 6 years. They became citizens of this country.
Because the immigrants that really wanted to be here, and you can speak to this as well, Jasmine, because you've got a fascinating story about your dad coming here. And they came with the intent to come to a free country because of the troubles that they were leaving behind. And I would like to actually ask Jasmine, being herself a young mother, we're talking about Mother's Day and what does it mean?
Yeah,
So-
I'm absolutely enjoying sitting here and just absorbing all of your knowledge because, I'm a young mom and I'm learning and there's something that you said that really touched me was that, the simplicity of things, like the amount of stuff you collect over the years. And, sometimes you think, that stuff just makes your child happy and, giving them everything that you never had, like, is going to make them happy and, their lives are going to be easier. But in reality, I feel like now I'm learning, right, is that, the experiences that I'm having with my daughter is, weighs more than all the stuff that I could ever give her, because those are the memories that she's going to hold and she's going to remember about me. And so it's something that I'm learning. But you said that and I was like, it just touched me a little bit because, it's just one of those things where, as a young mom, you kind of forget that because you want to get them the latest toys and it's like you said, everything is at our fingertips, and it's so easy to access and get. And so, it's easy to, want to satisfy your child's every needs, and so, or all their wants at once. And sometimes it's not always the best thing to do. And, do we set our kids up for, what I call privilege failure, which is like you give them everything you want and everything that they desire, and then that you end up, losing work ethic, losing values that you might instill in them. And, that's something I'm learning now, where I'm like, I'd rather have experiences where I get to have teachable moments that are lessons that she gets to carry for the rest of her life.
Right.
Yeah.
And I can give you a really good example of that. When my children were very small, we lived out in the country on 100 acres of land in a house built in the very early 1700s. When we bought it, it had no heat, no lights, and no running water, and a big black cook stove in the kitchen that was the heat for the whole house, per se. And I was canning one fall. My daughter was 3, my son was 2, and I was expecting my third child. And I used to put up 600 to 700 quarts of food every year on that big black stove. And I had all of the pots going, and I had jars being preserved. And my daughter came in, a 3-year-old, with a book, and she says, "Mama, I want a story." And so I looked at the clock and I said, when both of the big hands get up on the top, on the 12, I can stop doing this and we can have a story. Can you wait that long? And she said, I better. It's very hot in here. So she just went in the corner by the cool place and sat, and I timed it and took all the pots off the stove and put them on we had a big long soapstone counter. Put them on there to cool, sat in the middle of the floor and read her a story. Now, I hadn't thought of that in years, but she mentioned it not long ago. One of my earliest memories is sitting on the floor in the kitchen when you were canning and you stopped what you were doing to read me a story. That really validates what you just said, Jasmine. And it isn't about the stuff.
No.
We have too much stuff and not enough gathering.
Right. And I find now I'm like, cherishing more of the experiences with her, and it's really wonderful. And, I was raised by my grandmother too, and and all that strength that you were talking about, like ancestral lineage and all the the traditions you passed down. And I think about all the traditions that were passed down to me, and now I get to pass those down to my daughter. And it's true. It's not always about, because it's easy nowadays to be like, let's break tradition. I've broken lots of tradition, but I've also learned to respect those traditions, understand that they were there for a reason, and, to approach them in a way where, I could break them, but at the same time, I have to respect them and understand where they come from.
Right.
Yeah.
Another part of the vision today was the reminder that we all have teachings from our parents, mothers, fathers, aunts, uncles, grandparents, that help us to model who we want to be. Some of the greatest teachings I have from some of those people are things I absolutely do not want to emulate.
Absolutely.
And yet the ones I treasure the most are the ones I emulate the more dearly. Because I know if I focus on what I don't want, that's what I get.
Exactly.
And if I focus on what I do want, that's what I get. And I'm the engineer of my car. My car is my present body, and I'm the driver. And all of my ancestors are the motor. So if I fail to call on them, I don't have much power to go anywhere.
Right.
And I can choose my map, and I can choose to take some detours. But I must remember that sometimes, somewhere along the way, I need to have a destination. And it helps me take a few less detours.
And yet the detours can sometimes give us beautiful vistas,
Yes.
give us new insights that add to our wisdom as we're growing. And the detours can add a little bit of flourish to our life. And
Oh, of course.
major lessons.
Of course. Even when I travel now, when we travel, I'm off the interstate as much as I can be. I love going down I-81 because I take exits and take Route 11, which snakes in and around it, in and under, in and under, in and under. And I'll do that just as a break to get away from 80 miles an hour and cars passing on both sides.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think that's an important aspect of, speaking of cars, this vision came a couple days ago, a reminder. If we think about being in a car as our life, and we think about the car, the rear view mirror is 2 inches by 5 inches. The windshield is 2 feet by 5 feet. If we focus proportionately on where we're going versus where we've been, we have a better chance of getting someplace new. It's important not to block the mirror out. We need to know where we've come from.
And where we've been. It serves to guide us to where we're not to be.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, and we have that to help us get to where we are. Without that activity that exists in the rearview mirror, we wouldn't be looking through the windshield we're seeing through now. So we have to balance the importance of all of that, not disregard any of it, but not let what's behind us control where we're going.
And we also, in each different moment of time, we have new choices to make. As I was saying, my mother passed and she left a lot of treasures. So there are a lot of things that she had made and given. And yet, as I'm going through them, I'm longing for memories of kind words said. That would have been for me, because my love language, if you will, is words of affirmation and experiences, not things and treasures. And yet many people in my life have been the type of people to give gifts. And that's fine. That's beautiful. It's wonderful. However, what I wish for is kind words, experiences, and just that sense of connection. And that there are fewer of those than there are of treasures left by her legacy. So what that tells me is I choose to make a different legacy for my children. I want them to have the kind words. I want them to experience, to remember the experiences. Even though I have treasures that can be passed, I would wish that the treasures be connected with more of a memory. And it's the memory that helps to bring the lasting legacy. That is my vision.
And you know what's really wonderful is that you have a lasting legacy now in your books. They'll always have your words, which is wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
You know, and I was just thinking that, like, you know, what is something my grandmother I felt like left me, and I feel like it was this resourcefulness that she left me, because she grew up during, you know, the end of the Great Depression, and so they saved everything, and she was very crafty and she knew how to reuse things, and so as a result I ended up being very resourceful with the little things that I had. And so it was really wonderful to, you know, those things that you leave behind for your children now. Like, what are the things that you want to leave behind? How impactful do you want them to be? You know, do you want them to be experiences? Do you want them to be treasures? And understanding each other's love languages, including, you know, those of your children, is so important so that you can be able to leave those and communicate with them. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And we aren't who we were. We are who we are, but without who we were, we aren't who we are. So it's, if we put it all on a map and look at all those roads that it took to get where we are, to help us make choices about where to move forward, it helps.
It does.
It helps. It's not like reaching into a basket of chances. Well, shall I do this? Shall I do this? Shall I do this? It's effectively based on what we already know.
And it's important to reflect on things. And because it's through the reflecting, that's where the lessons come from, which then leads to the learning, which leads to the knowledge, which ultimately leads to wisdom. But if we just blast through life without paying attention, then we lose the lesson. We lose the learning. We lose the opportunity for growth.
Right. Well, I remember, speaking of memories, when I turned 3, my father made a little table and chairs for me and my dollies. Now, I always wanted 5 children, even as a little girl. And so I had 5 dollies or teddies. And so my dad, on my birthday, brought in this lovely red table, little 4-sided table with 4 chairs that he had made. Very, non-professional, wonderful. And so he said, I was overjoyed with this lovely table, and I put 4 babies in it, and I was holding the other one, and my dad looked at me, and he said, oh, Renee, I forgot you have 5. I'll fix it for you. And I went, no, Daddy, it's okay. No. And the next day when I came downstairs, he had added a quarter-round circle with hinges on each side of that table and made it round and made an extra chair.
Wow.
So that sticks in my mind so deeply and so clearly that he remembered, but he had temporarily forgotten when he made the table. But he fixed it. He fixed it. He fixed that request. He fixed that knowing. And
see that memory of
very
him
strong,
caring that much to really pay attention to your needs, to your passion, your desire, and he empowered that in you at a very young age, which
very
is
young,
brilliant,
very young,
so wonderful.
So, yeah, I'm blessed to have that. I know I interact with a lot of people in drug and alcohol recovery. It's my avocation and my passion, and I honor the unbelievable journey that I see people taking to find out who they are, not who they've been creating themselves to be.
Or who they thought that they were supposed to be.
Or being told who they were.
Absolutely.
Or were not. And I told them of an experience I had very, very early in my life regarding my mother. And when I told them, I looked up, there was about 26 people in the circle that day. Everybody was in tears. And I said, I only tell you this because I want you to understand you have a choice about who you want to be. It's not who you were treated to be, even as a very young child.
Right.
So bank those experiences in the do not want pile. But then also balance that with the do want pile. What do I want to be? How do I want my children to remember me? How do I want to be seen? And it's not easy. I know my children's memories with our time growing are not all wonderful. It was hard. It was hard. We lived 2,500 miles from home and no child support.
Right.
It was not easy, but they're all good people. And they all are productive in society, and they're all great parents.
Right.
What a reward that is for me, just to see them thriving in today's world.
Yes, that is the goal of a mother, of a parent, is to ultimately see their child survive and thrive in their world, because the world is very different.
Oh, my.
And, my mother's world is different than my world, and now my children's world. It has changed dramatically. And yet, if we can hold to some basic truths, regardless of what weather, what storms we're facing, if we can hold to that truth, honesty, and integrity, and the power of love,
right,
that will help to navigate us through those rocky times.
Right.
And that's kind of the message. And I'm going to thank you, Jasmine, for bringing up the book.
Right.
Because in this last few moments of the show, Grandmother Blue Crow has been with me on this journey, and we've been working on Chronicles of Hope, Book 3, The Archangels. And she has given some guidance through this. She's always a spiritual support in my life. And she wrote a little passage that's going to be included. We have 4 sessions with the Archangels and Angels, and then we have a session in the book called We Are Team Hope. So the different people from Team Hope have written passages, and I would love it if you would share in your own words what you wrote.
Oh, well, I was glad when I just read this that I remembered it. As an elder with Native American heritage, my connection with spirit remains strong, even with these trying times for our collective soul. I am learning, through the wonders of this tome, the deep entrenchment of ancestral memories we embody when entering physical form here on earth. As the archangels come forth with their teachings through Gary as receiver, Lois as interviewer scribe, and the support of Team Hope, my escalating awareness of knowledge presently inherent in this mind-body is constantly changing my perspective of what we already know versus what we are learning from birth forward. The Archangel's intent and candor in sharing these treasures at this time is vitally important for the continuing existence of our planet. With my rereading of each chapter, I become more aware of the impact these words are creating to formulate peaceful action at personal, community, and worldwide levels. Now is the time. We must take action. My brain is remembering what my soul already knows, and I am excited to be here for this experience. Keeping an open mind as well as an open heart while receiving these messages has assisted me in remaining grounded during the instability of our world. Grateful beyond measure to be here now. Thank you.
Beautiful. Very, of course, very beautifully put. Thank you. And the archangels do come through, and they're not messing around. They're saying, you must remember who you are. You must remember why you're here. You must take action against those who would cause harm. And there are there are people that have, I would say, they're soulless. There are those that are soulless that are only about power and greed. And that's, they've kind of led us down that path. And what the archangels are encouraging us to do is every single one of them have said, get back to the ways of the native teachings, get back to the land, get back to the simplicity of what is truly important in life. It is not the things, it is the experience, it is the oneness of all, that we are all one together, and we must celebrate, encourage, embrace, and cherish each other. That is critical. And if we can shift that in our own individual worlds, we and our own circles, because the circle will ripple out. And then we will change the vibrational energy indirectly, not necessarily consciously, but we will change the vibrational energy of this planet and return the planet to the beautiful being, the beautiful place it once was.
I have one memory of a gathering of grandmothers that I went to quite a few years ago, and they were from several countries. And when I got to one, she leaned close to me and she said, "En Lakesh." And I said, "I'm sorry, I didn't understand." She said, "En Lakesh." And I said, "That's lovely. Can you tell me what it means?" And she said, "It means you are another me." Mm. And she said, and the response is Elanin. I said, Elanin. She said, yes. And I said, and it means, she said, and it means we are both blessed.
Yes.
And so I love En Lakesh and Elanin.
Elanin. Beautiful.
Yes.
And you had a situation when you went to Hawaii and a similar message was sent. Is that right? I remember a story you told about being in Hawaii and they were singing a song that you had.
It was in Fiji.
It was, okay.
Yes, we went to the South Pacific on our honeymoon, and we were in Fiji. The hotel we were supposed to be at had been burned to the ground. There was revolution in every country we went to on our honeymoon. And so the housing that was provided by the taxi cab driver happened to be a timeshare. And so there was a couple from Michigan whose daughter was getting married, and they were having a location wedding. And they had opened the wedding reception to all the people staying at the timeshare.
Wow.
And so we went, and there was a drum, identical to a drum in my culture, with 4 drummers, but they were very large men. And they had very large voices, and they hit the downbeat, and they started the song, and I knew the song. And I softly sang the song in the Cheyenne language while they were singing in Fijian. And I was fairly close to them, but I was singing very softly to myself more than anything. And Richard was looking at me like, you know the words? So after they finished their program, one came over, the drum master came over, and he said, "Sister, you know my song." But he said, your words are different. He said, "What language were you speaking?" And I said, Cheyenne. He said, I don't know Cheyenne. I said, I don't know Fijian.
Mm-hmm.
He said, but you know the song.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I know, 10,000 miles away, and we have the same song.
Right. Yes.
And I'll never forget that.
And you know, that came to me as I was looking at the song that you had requested that I play, the Amazing Grace, sung in it's
Cherokee.
Cherokee. But if you look at the comments under it, there are people who are saying, that's not Cherokee, that's Korean. Those are Korean words. And it reminded me of your story, that the words translate into many languages the same. Who is to say one is correct? They're all root of the same.
Right.
We're all part of the same.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So I just, it just came to me, and Lakesh.
And Lakesh.
And Elanin.
Elanin.
We are both blessed.
We are all blessed.
Yes.
And any last thoughts on being a mother in this world today? A mother, a grandmother, and a great-grandmother. Any thoughts to share?
Keep the faith. Let your faith manifest your intent and guide you very carefully from where you are to where you wish to be, with the intent of knowing that rightness and kindness are very important. If you'd rather be right or kind, please choose to be kind, and then you'll always be right.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And Jasmine, last thoughts?
I would say, something I've learned recently in my life is it's never too late to try to, mend a bridge or, take care of a bridge or a relationship with your children.
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely.
That's my last thought.
Sending blessings
Beautiful.
to all mothers and all children.
Yes.
That they may see their mothers as doing the best they can at any given time. And time allows us to redo, a restart, a reset. So until next time, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Look up, stay positive, and be the light in someone's day.
Thank you. Keep the faith.
Keep the faith.
Yeah.